First of all, I'm so very happy
Okay.
that the president of Ghana decided to go to China to work on improving relations with China. And this is because I believe very strongly that given the challenges that face us, our best options for international partnership to get out of poverty and misery and so on is China. China is offering, something which is not on offer from the World Bank and the IMF, and is also not on offer from the Western capitalist states. China is offering us something that I think we should take advantage of. And one of the most important things that China has offered is the Belt and Road Initiative, which is largely to make resources available for expansion, rebuilding and expansion of national infrastructure. And for me, this is so very important because if you look at national infrastructure, it is all designed to facilitate a continued neo-colonial exploitation. You look at our railways, all of the railways in Ghana start from areas of the concentration of wealth. So it starts from diamond-producing areas, gold-producing areas, bauxite extracting areas, timber producing areas, and so on. And where do they end up? All of that ends up in the port. This is typical of the colonial economy. It hasn't changed. Now, if we have to build new economies, based on our own aspirations and so on, we need to change national infrastructure. And I think that the Belt and Road Initiative offered by China gives us the opportunity for rebuilding of national infrastructure with a new orientation. Besides, the Chinese do not have the rigid conditions that the West has. In the West, aid, assistance, and so on are seen as foreign policy instruments. In China, they are not foreign policy instruments. China believes that it needs itself to overcome bullying, especially by the US and so on, that the only way it can do that is to cooperate with third world countries and so on. So when you deal with China, you have a win-win situation, you understand? So I'm so very happy that the President, John Dramani Mahama, recognized this and decided to go to China and has been received at the highest level in Chinese society.
Well, Kwesi, before you go ahead, help us appreciate this. So he's been to Japan, he's been to Singapore, and now in China. Do you see any sort of shift in foreign policy relative to the kinds of countries that we want to build business with? I don't know. I'm just thinking aloud. I'm just thinking aloud.
You're allowed to think aloud,
Yes,
but allow me to say what I want to say
right.
the way I want to say it.
Please,
okay.
Yes.
Yes. So I noticed that there's this development, and I think that it's a very important development. And one of the issues which has come up during this, when I was talking about how he was received by President Xi Jinping himself, and was given a befitting welcome. You're comparing Ghana to China, so you know what I'm talking about. And he was given more than a befitting welcome. And I'm happy that he was able to meet at these very, very high levels and discuss important matters of trade and Chinese assistance and so on. Now, one of the things which has come up is the zero tariff offer by the Chinese. Interestingly, this is not a new offer.
Right.
It's an old offer. 5 years ago, I heard about this 5 years ago and so on. And it is not an offer which is being made exclusively to Ghana. I think this zero tariff regime is virtually for all African countries. Yeah. Okay. I think it's a good initiative. And the president says that we have to tie up the loose ends by the end of October. I'm hoping that we'll be able to do that. And we then will be able to take advantage of the export market in China and boost our exports. I'm told that over the last couple of years, we have increased our exports to China by only 11%. Within the same period, Chinese exports to Ghana have increased by 45%. I think we need to work towards reaching a certain balance in the trade between Ghana and China. There are a number of China is developing very, very fast. I mean, the Chinese leaders are thinking outside the box and so on. So one of the things that we used to export to China, and China was interested in, was our cocoa. Now China is producing its own cocoa, and it's doing it, with the most modern, methods and so on. So we may not, in the very short distance, be able to send cocoa to China because China may be producing more cocoa than we produce, and they may be producing better quality cocoa and so on. So that's a problem. But China is also interested in oil and gas. Unfortunately, we are not even producing enough for our own consumption. So then, what is it that we can offer China? And it would then appear that what we may be able to offer China will be some minerals. For example, China is very big on electric car manufacturing. It's the biggest, in the world today. And we appear to have a lot of lithium. Is it possible to engage with the Chinese and make lithium available and so on? So these are discussions that ought to continue. The zero tariff rate, I think is very, very important. Far more important than AGUA. AGUA, which was offered by the United States, had too many caveats. The Chinese don't have those caveats. So relationship between Ghana and China improving, it's very good.
See, this
and I like to go back to the early 1960s. To the time when China and Ghana had excellent relationships. And you'll be surprised that the excellent relationship between China and Ghana was anchored on a personal relationship between Premier Xu Enlai and President Nkrumah. I mean, the two of them had a chemistry which was incredible. They got on very, very well. And that chemistry between the two leaders helped to advance Chinese and Ghanaian interests, It also helped China to contribute significantly to the national liberation struggle in Africa. China was a major contributor to the national liberation struggle in Africa, provided arms, provided diplomatic support, and so on. And it's been narrowed down to the personal chemistry between Premier Xu Enlai and President Nkrumah. It seems to me that kind of chemistry is developing between President Xi Jinping and President Mahama. And I'm very, very happy about these developments. I think we should cultivate this relationship and see how best what we can get out of it. A couple of years ago, I was in China on a private visit. My visits are usually private. And I was having a conversation with a Chinese official. And the Chinese official was very shocked. At the time, the IMF was giving us, I think, $250 million. We had sent a whole delegation, finance minister, everybody was in Washington, because of $250 million. The Chinese at the time were offering us between $6 to $12 billion, and we're not paying attention to the Chinese. So I think that this incredible subservience to the West ought to stop. And there's a lot more to be gained by deepening cooperation with China. And I'm happy that the president went to China. I'm happy at the results of the trip. And I do hope that something very concrete can come out of this relationship with China. There are a number of projects here which are game changers, major game changers. And one of them is the petroleum hub, which is being built in the Western region, the petroleum hub. It's the second biggest project in the whole of Africa. And if you're able to get the Chinese interested in the petroleum hub idea and so on, it may benefit us in many ways. I mean, that's an attempt to position Ghana as the Rotterdam of Africa. You know, if you look at the price build-up of petroleum products and so on, you find this phrase, ex-Rotterdam. So Rotterdam is a reference point. Now, Rotterdam doesn't produce crude, does it? And yet it has become a petroleum hub. So this whole idea of building this petroleum hub, I think is a fantastic idea. It's supposed to cost, I think, in the realm of about $60 billion. Makes it the second biggest project in Africa. So if you can interest the Chinese in this whole idea of a petroleum hub and so on, I think it would be very, very useful, you know. So.